started taking drum lessons when I was in the 8th grade, and then I got in a band, and that band lasted up until my mid 26, 27. We played. We had recorded that album that was later on been re-released that I actually cut my own parts on, and now is being released on Jack White's label, Third Man Records. But I played up until in that band until I was about 26, 27. I got started in the mastering business. I used to do studio drumming and play around at different studios around here in the early 70s. And a lot of the studios at that time had small mastering rooms in them. And that's when I first learned about mastering and what it was. And when I had some time, I would go in and sit in and watch these guys cut records. And I just thought it was real fascinating, and I thought it was a great job. The original way that we cut lacquers would be with this Studer machine over here, which is the head stack is being serviced at the moment. But we would go from the Studer machine, no digital in the path at all. Come in through the console. This is a special mastering console designed here at Capitol, so it has duplicate everything. You have an A side and a B side, and so I would go through there, I'd do my notes and adjust, and then roll the tape and go to the lacquer. If I'm going in from high-res files or any digital files, I'll take the Pro Tools. Will have a digital signal, and I'll go from the Pro Tools, same thing, comes out into the analog board. I'll make the adjustments that are proper and level-wise and do all my different notes. If it needs any adjustment, I try to make it as clean a signal path as possible, unless I need something to use. Otherwise, it's a pretty straight cut. I try to keep that as clean as possible, especially if it's really a high end, if it's a Brian Wilson or something like that, where you got, 192 files. Sometimes people will bring me in one of their old CDs, and it does need some EQ help, and so you try to put in the Neve or the Soundtech and kind of warm it up and give it get a little more vinyl friendly. Most of the time, half of my experience these days is educating the folks on what they can and what they can't do, because everybody wants their record done. But, they will come in here and hand us their CD and go, okay, cut me some vinyl. Let's say the CD's an hour or 70 minutes long. Well, the ideal record is 18 to 20 minutes per side. And after that, you start to lose level and you start to lose quality. We can do things to get it all on there if it's a 25, 26-minute record, but you're going to lose some bottom end and you're going to lose some level. And I have to explain to them why, And so we go, and what their options are. Let's say if they have a lot of material and they want a good sounding record, then I always recommend them to quarter it up or make a double album. So it's more expensive, but it's worth it if they want to do that. I also recommend to them that if they don't have the budget to do a double album, then they should cherry pick their favorite songs from that hour's worth of program and make a good 20-minute per side record. And there's no harm in having the record being a little different than your CD. They can be different. But most people still want to put all their music out that they've got on their CD, so they'll try to do what I've said, or if they want to put it all out, they'll do a double album. They'll find a way. We kind of work back and forth. Sometimes I'll cut them an acetate as reference so they can go home and play it, and they can get the idea, and they can actually hear it, because no matter how much I talk, it's not going to hit home until they actually have something on their turntable in their comfortable listening environment that they can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So I could seduce them all day long with the room in here, but until they get home and in their own spot, then it's going to all come together at that point. They're a young band, and they were always digital, so they had never experienced any kind of the analog, the sound. And so when we took that record and put it onto vinyl, it changed the whole dynamics of everything, and everybody really liked it. It was just like hearing a new record again, same songs but a little different flavor. This is a great Neumann lathe. It's been here since the mid-70s. They brought it in. The story goes, I wasn't here back in those days, but the story is that, I mean, we used to have different, it was some Westrex Scully lathes here. But when the Beatles were so popular and they were cutting all their lacquers in England on the Neumann lathes, they wanted the same thing over here in the United States. And since the Beatles were on Capitol then got all set up with Neumann lathes. So there used to be one in the room next door over here. There's one here now, and now we've taken that one out of storage that used to be in that room, and we're setting it up next door so we can take some of the load off of my workload and help me, because we have a lot of vinyl cutting going on. So it's nice to be able to be training someone and as well as getting a little bit of help on the workload. Since I started mentoring Ian, he's great. It's great candidate, like I said, because he has a technical ability as well as the musician experience, being in a band and knowing how records should sound, how I get him to sound. I show him the differences and the difficulties and the different errors, and he gets it right away. So he's been a great, candidate, as well as he's learning so much by being the one that's assembling all of this stuff that came out of storage. They put it back in storage really good, but still there's so many little parts to this thing that they just basically cut the wires and box it up and put it away. So now he's got to put it all back through and recalibrate it. And with all that, he's just learning so much that there won't be a fear that, he'll need somebody to help him. Let's say after I leave and something breaks, he's not going to know how to kind of what's going on here. He'll have that knowledge without having to call somebody.
When I first came in here, it looked really cool, and I realized that Ron was, he's the only guy here doing it right now. He's kind of like the keeper of the key, and so I said, "Hey, why don't you teach me how to do this?" And he said, "No problem." And I guess it took about maybe 6 months of kind of once in a while, a couple times a week, showing me how things worked, and then he allowed me to come in here alone on the weekend and do some work do some practice work, and I love it. And he's a great teacher, and now we're bringing in a second lathe that we had that Capitol had in storage, and it's in the room next door, and I'm building that up and using some of the technical skills I have for refurbishing the electronics and making the signal path really good, and that's coming together, and it's almost finished, and it's exciting. I guess the first thing we worked on, Ron had me come in and help with the Leanne Rimes project, because the way we did it when we took the digital mixes and put them to vinyl and opened up the LPI and made the groove real deep and just used, a whole lacquer for one song. And then we had to play it back on the turntable back into the computer at a real high resolution. And so I was in here kind of calibrating the levels and stuff. And then I got, Ron ushered me in to get involved in doing some of the cutting, because it was a good way to learn, because it was, we cut and we take it off, we put it on, and we cut and we take it off, and it was a repetitious thing, and I learned a lot from that. So just the other day, I was in the sandwich shop down the street, and I swear he must have been like 14 or 15-year-old kid walks in with a bag of records from Amoeba. And the other kid working at the shop was like, "Oh, what'd you get?" And they started talking about their vinyl, and I asked the kid, I was like, "What kind of turntable do you have?" And he's like, "Oh, I have a Techniques, blah blah blah," and I was really impressed, and I felt good about this whole thing, because it just seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and it's a challenge to be able to, and it's cool because it'll be a kind of a competitive market to see who can cut the loudest and make things sound really good, and I'm looking forward to being in that whole thing.
Oh, I ask them because I'm always curious on what the draw is, because now we're at a point where it's not just their parents' generation, it's their 3 and 4 generations back from that, and it's their great grandparents that told them about vinyl, and they have some of those records, and they just tell me straight out they love the whole listening experience. They love the fact that they can sit down and they can put a record on and enjoy the music and read the art, see the artwork, read the credits. And it's not just, okay, I can put 8 hours of music on a disc and put it in my boat and drive around, and music is then a background experience. It's not the front format experience, so where they enjoy listening. So I get that all the time, and it just kind of confirms to me that it's here to stay. It's not going away. At first I thought, well, this will be a kind of a fad. It could die off in a year or so, but now the plants are still going crazy. We're still cutting loads of vinyl, and it's solid.